Hello, Emma McNally here from Achieve Your Greatness, and today I wanted to talk to you about something called neuroplasticity. So what is neuroplasticity? Well, it's all about how we can make change in terms of our brain. It's based in neuroscience, as you can imagine, and what we talk about is that we in our brains have millions of neurons. And I'm going to demonstrate what happens in our brains with habits and beliefs and even emotions using chocolate. So what we've got is, imagine these chocolates as neurons in your brain. As I say, we have millions of them, and between them there's a little gap. If you see, there's a tiny little gap there, and that's called a synaptic gate. Now, just to say, other chocolates are available, but what happens in that synaptic gate is messages get sent across. So that's how we communicate in our brain, neurons sending messages across. So what can happen is that we see something, or we hear something, or maybe we feel something, a touch, or smell something, or taste something, and immediately there's a chain reaction. You ever noticed that? Maybe somebody cuts you up on the street and you're angry, immediately you fly off the handle. Or maybe you see somebody and you feel amazing, or you hear a piece of music and you feel great. Well, what's happening in your brain is there's a trigger, and then following that trigger, there's a neurological pathway that is created. So when we learn something new, those neurons create those neurological pathways, and the more we do it, the more we practice, the more those pathways get developed. So let me show you what I'm talking about with the aid of some chocolates here. So bear with me 1 second when I just change the camera angle. So there you go, that's what we have in front of us here, is lots and lots of chocolate. So imagine that's your brain there. Okay, so the first time you do something, it's a bit like, we'll take this for example, as the first time you do something, you start to create what I like to call a pathway through those neurons, all right? So you start to create a pathway all the way through those neurons. Yeah, so maybe it's the first time you've learned to ride a bike. So you get on the bike, very first time, and through you go. First time is always the trickiest, I would say, because it's the first time you're cutting that pathway. It's almost, if you imagine this as a jungle, first time you go through the jungle, then you're going to be creating that pathway for the first time. And then as you do it more and more, that pathway becomes wider and wider. You see that? So this is basically a pathway in your brain. So like I say, a neuron sending a message all the way through to an outcome for you. So neuroplasticity is about that plasticity. So do you remember when you were kids, maybe you had plasticine and you could adapt it to make something new? Well, your brain is exactly the same. So if that pathway isn't working for you, say that's you getting upset or grumpy when the bus is late, for example, and you decide that you want something different, then what you can start to do is start to create a new pathway, maybe over here. So you start to create a new pathway for the very first time, okay? And then you go through it again. So pathway for the very first time, second time through, third time through, ooh, fourth time through, and can you see what's happened to your old pathway? Basically, you've got a new pathway that's been created, and this old pathway over time gets covered up. So that's the great news, because as you know, with habits and behaviours, we're basically practicing. So in the same way as when you were younger, you learnt a musical instrument and you practiced to get really good at it, well, we also practice things that maybe are less than helpful. So maybe a habit that you don't want to do, biting your nails, for example, or eating unhealthily. The more you do it, the more that pathway is created. However, the great news is, if you want to change that, if you want a new pathway, then you can. And neuroplasticity enables you to do that. So that's it for today. I hope that's made sense, and that actually the great news is that because we have this neuroplasticity, we're never too old to learn. We can always change. Some of us may have heard this phrase of like, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. Absolutely you can. Through this science, through neuroscience, you can. So sometimes those pathways can be created with like a significant emotional event, and they get created really, really quickly. Other times you need to go over and over and over. It's called classic conditioning. And by going over and over and over the new behaviour, that then creates that new pathway. So NLP gives you literally hundreds of tools to enable you to do that, to be able to learn how to create those new neurological pathways so that you can have a better outcome. So if life isn't working out the way you want it to, then investigate NLP. I would be more than happy to share more with you. And so thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Emma McNally, and you've been listening to my video from Achieve Your Greatness on neuroplasticity. See you soon. Bye.